Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yesterday we had another great day of basketball, and I think I should just preface this by saying that today's video is probably going to be pretty long because, well, it was a big day and there were a couple of really good games, and it was a great day to be a basketball fan, unless you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan, that is, which is, of course, the type of fan that I am. So maybe not a super great day for me, but we'll take the good with the bad, I guess. I'm still confident in the Bucks' chances in this series, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Today, a few topics we're going to be talking about are the Gordon Hayward injury, the Bucks Magic game, the Heat Pacers game, the Rockets Thunder game, and the Blazers Lakers game. And I gotta tell you, that was one of the best games I've watched all season. So, very excited to talk about that one, and let's get into it. So, we're gonna start off by talking about the Gordon Hayward injury. And when I heard this yesterday, I was just so sad because this guy went through that terrible injury. And I get that this is nowhere near that scale of injury, and he'll be back in a couple weeks, but to anyone, this is just not the guy you wanted to see an injury happen to. So you got to just feel for Gordon Hayward, feel for the Celtics organization, because that definitely made this Sixers series a lot tougher. I think that the Celtics are probably one of the least deep teams in the entire NBA. They've got Brad Wanamaker in the rotation already, and I don't know who is going to be filling Gordon Hayward's minutes. You got to figure Marcus Smart will probably step into a starting role. And then off the bench, they'll have Wanamaker, Enes Kanter, um, Robert Williams played decent yesterday. But after that, I'm kind of blanking on who else they have to go to. So I think that it's going to be a big struggle, those bench minutes are, for the Celtics. The Sixers don't have an outstanding bench, but they've got a solid one, and that injury is just going to be a real changer in the series. Marcus Smart starting, he's a better defender, obviously, so that might give them a better matchup on who would they put him on? Richardson, maybe? Maybe they put him on Tobias Harris, but I kind of like Tatum on Harris. I think Tatum's a very capable perimeter defender. So you put Smart on the guard. So I think that the Celtics will still win this series, but I'm much less confident than I was prior to this news. And I think Philly's got a really good shot now. And I would not at all be surprised to see them take this series. They have the best player in this series in Embiid. Tatum's not there yet. I guess I could talk about Tatum a little bit and my views on him. I think that he benefits a lot from having really skilled perimeter teammates in Kemba, Jaylen Brown, Gordon Hayward, and so he doesn't always have the best perimeter defender on the other team guarding him. So he's really benefiting from those other players. And I don't think that he is a superstar yet, like a lot of people say he is. I think he's more on a Chris Middleton, Bradley Beal type level. But I'm not saying I don't see the potential. I think this guy could win an MVP one day. But right now, I think people are a little a little high on Jason Tatum, and they're overrating him just a bit. But I think Embiid is the best player in the series. Tatum's not there yet, like I just said. And I think having the best player in the series is really important. And the Celtics losing one of their four best players is a big blow. So it'll be it'll be a fun series to see what happens. Um, Next, first game on the dock yesterday was Bucks Magic, and oh boy, were the Bucks disappointing. Um, they just came out and they didn't look. They kind of looked like Game One against the Celtics in the Eastern Conference semifinals last year, which was a game I happened to be at, and they got blown out in that game too. And it just looked like there was no sense of urgency. They didn't they were a little slow. They didn't care that much, it seemed like. And today it definitely seemed that way. They weren't able to just flip the switch and turn it on at the start of the playoffs. They were still playing the way they were during the play-in bubble games. So, yeah, we'll see what happens, but I'm still fairly confident in the Bucks. I think they'll probably win the next 4 games, but there were a lot of things I saw yesterday that made me nervous. First off, the turnovers. I think that might just be the lack of want to win and how hard they were playing. They might not have valued the ball the way they should, which came back to bite them pretty hard. Magic had a couple more turnovers than you would like as well, but the Magic had a lot of fast break points off of those Bucks turnovers, so we really have to work on limiting that the rest of the series. Giannis, his aggression in the first quarter, I decided I wanted to talk about that a bit because he only had 5 points, 3 points, something like that. And so I was kind of disappointed with that from him. I think he needs to be attacking all the time, but for the rest of the game, he was spectacular. He is not the problem here. The problem is everybody else on the roster because Giannis and Bledsoe had a decent game getting to the rim. So this can kind of exclude him too. But there is no one else on this team that can penetrate. Middleton, he tries, but he's not athletic enough, and his moves just aren't decisive enough to get around a good perimeter defender. And he is probably best off shooting the ball from the perimeter, and he wasn't hitting shots yesterday. So yesterday, we need a lot more from Chris Middleton than we got yesterday, that's for sure. On defense, I think Budenholzer's got to make a change because Nick Vucevic is a perfect counter to Bud's scheme. What Bud likes to have Brook Lopez do is off a pick and roll, Brook fades way back into the paint to protect the rim. And that's been Bud's strategy ever since he came to Milwaukee. He always has Brook doing this. But it didn't work yesterday because Vucevic picked and popped every time, and Lopez's closeouts. I mean, Lopez is probably one of the slowest players in the NBA. He's huge, and he does not move quick. So his closeouts were not fast enough, and Vucevic was on fire yesterday. He was hitting every midi. He was hitting every long-range shot. So Bud's got to make a change there to stop Vucevic. Markelle Fultz was also hitting mid-range jumpers, but I'm a little less concerned about that because Markelle Fultz is not a great shooter. I think Markelle Fultz actually has a lot of potential and could maybe be an all-star one day, but I'm not worried right now about giving up a jumper to him because that's just not his game yet. So another thing that makes me really nervous is we just lost to a Magic team that is the 8th seed, and they didn't even have 3 of their 6 or 7 best players in John Isaac. Obviously, that ACL tear is just so sad for me. Aaron Gordon will be back soon, and Mo Bamba, and also Michael Carter-Williams, who's been a great role player for them this year. So, are we going to be able to beat a full-strength Miami Heat team? Because there's a big difference from the Magic team we played yesterday that was starting Gary Clark and James Ennis, and going from that to a Miami Heat team that probably would have won 50 games had we played an entire season. I don't know if we're going to be able to beat that team with how we played yesterday. Like I said, I'm not worried about the Magic. I think that we just weren't playing with enough urgency, and we will win the next 4 games and move on. But I was pretty confident going into the playoffs that we'd beat the Heat easily, but that may not happen. I'm a lot more nervous after yesterday. I don't think it's time to panic yet, but I think that we do need to make some changes for sure. Another change would be shortening the bench. Kyle Korver's got a lot of experience, but I don't think he has any business being on the court in the playoffs right now, unless it's for a situation where we need a 3, because he's a minus on defense. He's too slow, commits silly fouls. Obviously, He took a nice charge yesterday and may have broken his nose, so that may solve that problem if he can't play because of a broken nose. But I also think that Robin Lopez didn't play much, only like 3 or 4 minutes maybe, but he also should not be playing at all, I don't think. And once we get Ilyasova back, that'll be nice because it'll be someone else to give the minutes to. So I also think that that was a big loss because he's, I'd say, our third best bench player after George Hill and Dante. So we need him back, and I'm pretty confident still. Like I said, this series is gonna go in the Bucks' favor. Celtics Pacers was the next game yesterday, and the most interesting matchup by far for me in this series is the Miles Turner versus Bam Adebayo matchup, the centers. And yesterday, Bam won that battle. He had a double-double. His plus-minus was the highest on his team. Miles Turner's plus-minus was the lowest on his team. So if Bam is dominating Miles Turner, the Pacers are going to have a really hard time. But Miles has the potential as a shot blocker and a post defender overall to slow down Bam a bit. So if he can step up and play very well for the Pacers, that definitely increases their chances of winning. And speaking of their chances of winning, I'm pretty low on the Pacers right now. I kind of doubt they can beat the Heat. This Heat team feels really good to me. Bam is a really good player. He's top 30, top 35 in the NBA. Jimmy Butler's top 15, top 20. So that's two pretty, well, I guess all-star level players this year. So those are two guys that are, well, who is the Pacers' best player right now? Is it slightly injured Victor Oladipo? Is it TJ Warren? I think Bam's better than both of those two. So, like I said about Embiid in the Celtics series, it's very important to have the best player in the series. And I think that the Heat have the two best players. So that makes a really big difference. And I think the Pacers are going to struggle. I think that I think the Pacers will certainly win some games because TJ's a really good scorer, so he'll probably go off once or twice. VO can place defense. He's a good defender. Brogdon is a good defender, good offensive player. So they have a really good defensive backcourt. So I think the Pacers will take it to 6 games, but I really am high on the Heat right now. That team feels really good to me. I should probably say I wasn't able to watch that game yesterday, but from what I saw in the highlights and the box score, I feel pretty good about the Heat. And I should also probably talk about Tyler Hero because one of my best friends has a man crush on him. So, yeah, Tyler Hero, I think he's got a lot of potential as a 3-and-D wing. He could maybe be an all-star one day in kind of the lane of Klay Thompson. Maybe not quite that good, but he can shoot. He's got a lot of potential as a defender because of how long his arms are. He's got a long wingspan, so he's not the most athletic player, but that'll come with time. And I think Tyler Hero could be a really good player in the NBA. Third game of the day yesterday was Rockets Thunder, and I was very, very impressed with the Rockets yesterday. I think that they played great, and I think that the biggest change in this was the ability of the role players to knock down threes. It was very impressive the way Jeff Green was shooting, the way Ben McLemore was shooting, Eric Gordon was hitting shots, and let me tell you, in case you didn't know, Eric Gordon is back and better than ever. That guy was unstoppable yesterday. And with Russ out, they need him to play like a second option, and he did yesterday. He looked really good. And the Rockets played great in the seeding games in the bubble, and they didn't even have Eric Gordon. I think this team, if their role players are hitting shots like this, if Ben McLemore and Jeff Green are playing this well, if Austin Rivers hits some big shots, guys like that are knocking down shots, Daniel House, PJ Tucker, of course, this team can win the championship this year. I'm probably higher on the Rockets than most, but I've got a lot of confidence in this team, and I think James Harden really wants it. He's never won in the playoffs before. So once Russ comes back, if Russ comes back, because I think they're going to need him very soon. I think the Thunder are better than what they showed yesterday, and the Rockets hit a lot of their shots. So if those shots aren't falling, I think the Thunder are definitely capable of winning this series still. And the Lou Dort loss is pretty big for them because Lou is probably the best matchup on Harden. He's a really good perimeter defender. He's a undrafted rookie, so obviously he's got a lot of grit, and they need him back ASAP. And from what I saw, it looks like he should be back soon. From what I read, Billy Donovan said there's no timetable on him yet, but they need him because obviously he's a better defender than Terrence Ferguson. Ferguson might be a better shooter, but Lou Dort is probably the one guy who can come close to being able to guard Harden. Another really interesting thing in this series for me is what Steven Adams can do. Obviously, Steven Adams is a big guy, and the Rockets do not play any big guys, so it's an interesting matchup for him. Going into the series, I thought that Steven Adams was one of the worst center matchups actually for the Rockets because I thought of him always as being a more mobile center than a lot of the centers in the league, more mobile than guys like Nurkic or Porzingis, although that might be more of an effort thing with Porzingis. I think he's more mobile than Jokic, although obviously Jokic is a worse matchup for the Rockets. But Steven Adams yesterday, his closeouts just were not quick enough. Closing out on PJ Tucker and Jeff Green, they both were hitting threes in his face, and he was not able to get out there quick enough. On offense, he made a big difference with his back-to-the-basket game. I think he definitely scored double digits, and it felt like he grabbed a lot of offensive rebounds, which is key for the Thunder. But on defense, they need him to be able to close out on those guys because otherwise he's going to be a minus in this series, and they need him because he's probably their fourth best player, maybe fifth best player, depending on how you value Schroeder off the bench. So I think that he can be a real turning point and a real wild card in this series. Another matchup that was interesting to me was the Gallinari versus Jeff Green / whoever the Rockets are playing at the 4. Gallinari scored a lot of points yesterday. I think he was either right under 30 or in the 30s. He might have had 29. But Gallinari was hitting shots yesterday, and that's what the Thunder are going to need from him. There's not really, other than Jeff Green, there's nobody with the height to get a hand in his face. There's nobody that he can't shoot over, and that's what they're going to need out of him because Gallinari is a walking bucket. That guy can score. So if he keeps playing and shooting like this, that's going to help them a lot. But on defense, they need a bit more out of him. It felt like every time he was guarding Jeff Green, they would hunt that matchup, and Jeff Green was getting to the rim. Now, this might be because Green had a really great game yesterday, but it also might be Gallinari's defense shining through because he's known to be a minus defender, and they're going to need a bit more effort out of him for sure. I don't know if he's capable of completely locking down a star player, but Jeff Green is far from a star player. So if he's guarding guys like him, guys like Ben McLemore, he's got to close out faster. He's got to move his feet better, and he's got to play better defense overall. The Thunder role players for me, what they need surrounding Chris Paul and Shea and Gallinari and Steven Adams playing the 3 spot, they really need a 3-and-D player. And from what I saw yesterday, all of their guys are 3 or D players. Ferguson was hitting shots. He's probably the best shooter out of their role players, although Darius Bazley was knocking down shots too. But neither of those two, Ferguson and Bazley that is, are very good defenders from what I saw yesterday. They were both getting beat to the rim. They were both having trouble closing out. Although a lot of that for Ferguson might have been because he was guarding Harden. If you match him up with Austin Rivers or someone else like that, it might be a better matchup. As Stan Van Gundy said, Schroeder did a great job on Harden yesterday. He was probably the best option the Thunder had to throw at Harden. So maybe they'll start looking to play Schroeder more alongside Ferguson so that Ferguson can match up with someone else. But like I said, they need Lou Dort back because he's the best option as their fifth starter for sure. Muscala is kind of similar to those two, especially in this series because he can really shoot for a big guy. He's probably one of the best shooting big men in the league. Kind of reminds me of Olynyk a little bit. But from Muscala, he's too slow. He can't guard the perimeter players on the Rockets. He needs to guard PJ Tucker probably, but he's also not quick enough to close out on PJ Tucker, and as we all know, PJ can knock down corner threes. So I don't know if Muscala can play in this series. They might need to look to other options. And Hamidou Diallo is kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum from those three, where on the 3 and D spectrum because he can't really shoot. I think he shot a couple air balls yesterday, which is definitely not good. But he's a good defender, and he's athletic, he's quick, he has a lot of potential as a defensive player, and I think he already is a pretty good defender. So each of those, I think 4 guys I talked about, Ferguson, Baisley, Muscala, and Diallo, have their strengths but also their weaknesses. And they really need one of those guys to step up and shore up their weaknesses to win this series. Throughout the game, Stan Van Gundy was talking about how the Thunder offense looked stagnant. And obviously, I don't think their offense was great, but when Gallo is hitting shots like that, they are okay to run their offense through him. Chris Paul didn't have a great game, but he was still getting to the rim and still creating great offense for those guys. But I think their real problem was defense, which I've talked about a lot already, but they really just need to figure out how they're going to guard Harden without overhelping and giving up the open threes. And might not be a way to do that. They might just have to hope that the Rockets players start missing their threes. Because yesterday, those guys were locked in and locked on. And they were hitting those shots. And they're going to get those shots a lot of the time. So for the Thunder they got to figure something out, or they got to pray. Because yesterday the Rockets looked like a far better team. And I'm not sure that the Thunder have a chance if they're hitting shots like that. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure anyone has a chance because the Rockets are really, really good. And the last game yesterday was Blazers-Lakers. And let me tell you, this is probably true for everyone, but this is by far my favorite series of round one. There's so many fun things going on in this game. The level of play felt so high, it felt like the Western Conference Finals to me. And obviously today I'm rocking the Dame jersey because, well, I was going to wear a Milwaukee jersey, but after the way my Bucks played yesterday, I am not in favor of supporting them. And obviously I don't want to be a fair weather fan, but Dame earned it. Dame earned my jersey wearing today because the the Trailblazers had a great game. The Lakers' game plan was very, very obvious. Get the ball to Anthony Davis early and often and run your offense through him. And they did a pretty good job containing him. I liked Wenyen Gabriel. I liked the energy he brought, and he played pretty well guarding AD. Nurkic, when he was on AD, looked a little slow. He committed a lot of fouls, as did the rest of the Trailblazers big men. I looked at one point, I think Whiteside finished with 5 fouls, Melo finished with 5, Nurk finished with 5, and so did Wenyen Gabriel. All 4 of their power forward center guys finished with 4 fouls. Or 5 fouls, excuse me. So they have to work on not fouling AD because AD, when they put pressure on him, he had a lot of trouble finishing at the rim. And from what I've seen in the bubble, AD just really hasn't looked good. He hasn't looked like a guy capable of shouldering the load that the Lakers need him to carry because If you haven't noticed, this team is not deep. They looked like a two-man team yesterday. They were having a hard time getting buckets from anyone outside of LeBron and AD. Kuzma hit a couple threes. Caruso got to the rim a couple times, but it was a struggle if LeBron and AD were not the ones taking the shot. So, the thing that interests me most in this series is the big man matchup, which I talked about a little already, but yesterday it looked like the Lakers wanted to play AD at the 5 a lot, and that was the lineup they went to down the stretch and for a large part of the second half. JaVale McGee, very few minutes. I think he started the half and played 7 minutes, 8 minutes, and then did not re-enter either half. So I'm interested to see what the Blazers do against those one big lineups. I think the Blazers should go two bigs against them because, as we saw yesterday, Danny Green, KCP, those guys are not threats to get to the rim and beat your big guy. So I don't really have a problem with it if they've got Nurkic matched up on Danny Green because those role players for the Lakers just did not look good yesterday. And they are going to need a lot more from those guys to win this series. I think that based off yesterday's game, Alex Caruso looked like the third best player on the Lakers. Is a team that has Alex Caruso as their third best player going to win a championship? I don't think so. So the Lakers really need someone to step up. They desperately need Avery Bradley as a guard defender who could match up with Dame and CJ. Because in case you didn't watch, Dame and CJ were hitting shots yesterday. CJ didn't shoot a great percentage, but it felt like every time the Lakers went on a run, he hit a big shot to shift the momentum back in the Blazers' favor. So I'm very, very impressed with him, especially because he's playing through this back injury, and he looks really, really good. I really like CJ, and I think that this Blazers team, they've got a shot. I was unsure. I thought they could win a couple games in this series, but after watching yesterday, if they can limit AD the way they did, this is a very winnable series for them. Melo, I think, needs to stop forcing it a little bit. In the second half, he did a better job of not looking to shoot post fadeaways and pull up mid-rangers, and he did a much better job of just taking open threes when he had the opportunity, and he knocked them down really well. He hit 2 big threes in the second half that I can remember. So they need that from him, and I think he's ready to step into this role. I've been a little unsure, but he realizes now that he's a 3-and-D wing. Maybe not so much D, but there were a couple of possessions where you could tell he was giving it everything on defense against LeBron. And obviously LeBron exploited that matchup more times than not, but Carmelo held his own for the most part, and I was very impressed. And with LeBron, holy cow, that dude is a passing maestro. He is definitely the best passer I've ever seen. Maybe that's a hot take with CP and Kyrie and Steph playing in the league since I've started watching, but holy cow, LeBron always finds the open man, and like we saw on that Markieff Morris behind the back pass yesterday, sometimes even his own teammates don't know the pass is coming. So if he continues to be the greatest creator in the NBA and keeps playing like a LeBron, obviously made history yesterday with 20 plus points, 15 plus rebounds, 15 plus assists. They said it was the first time that had ever been done. So LeBron is capable of carrying this team, but he needs more help from Anthony Davis because when he won championships with Cleveland, he had a lot of help from Kyrie. When he won championships with Miami, Dwayne Wade always played great in the playoffs. So Anthony Davis needs to step up his game. A guy who is that good, who most consider a top 10 NBA player, cannot finish a game with a plus-minus of minus 20. That is atrocious, and they need a lot more production out of him. Going down that stretch in the fourth quarter, that was one of the most exciting games I've ever seen. Um, Dame and CJ hitting big shots, Whiteside stepping up on defense with a few really key blocks. That game was just so fun to watch, and I can't wait for the rest of this series. As of now, I actually think that I saw enough yesterday to swing my prediction. I think the Blazers are going to win that series in 7. And I feel like this team has a real shot at upsetting the Rockets. I think if they do win before the series starts, I'll pick the Rockets because I think that the Rockets are basically a better version of the Trailblazers in that they're led by 2 guards, although that might be the only similarity because the Blazers have good big men and obviously the Rockets have no big men. So I'm excited to see either the Lakers or the Blazers play the Rockets. Either way, that's going to be a great game. And yesterday we were spoiled with a great day of basketball, and hopefully we get more of the same today. Kind of recapping the video, Bucks Magic. Disappointed in my Bucks, but I'm still confident that this series is very much theirs. Celtics Pacers, Heat Pacers. I like the Heat a lot, probably higher on them than a lot of people, and I think the Pacers are going to struggle, as I said earlier. Rockets Thunder. Rockets are a juggernaut. That team has got a really good shot at winning the title, I think, and the Thunder need to step up to win that series. And finally, Blazers Rockets. Really fun series. Could go either way, and I can't wait for Thursday when we get to see those two teams duel it out again. So that's going to be it for me, and I hope you all have a great day.